Director Crum,
Here.
Director Keith, Director Nasser,
Here.
Director Witherell,
Here.
Chairperson Smant.
Here. The next item on the agenda is approve the meeting agenda, including the proposed consent and other agenda items and any additions or deletions.
I'll make the motion.
Second. Do you want to recall, do you want a roll call vote? Well, you keep telling me we have to do a roll call. I don't care. I just want to know what you want.
Okay, well, I can't speak when somebody has their, you gotta speak. We don't need a roll call vote unless there's somebody remote. So no one's remote, everyone's in the room, so we don't need roll call votes unless somebody wants a roll call vote, right?
Okay, all in favor of approving the meeting agenda, say aye. Aye. Opposed? We're now up to the auditor's presentation.
Okay, is Peter on?
Peter, I have you unmuted. You can go ahead.
Peter, are you on?
We can go on to the other items. Why don't we move on to,
Peter, you want to unmute and start your presentation? Peter, we can't hear you. You got to unmute your mic. Peter, you may want to call on the number on your phone. We're not getting anything from your presentation.
Can you hear me now there?
Yep, we can hear you. Thanks, Peter.
Sorry about that. I unmuted myself on the computer, but it didn't unmute me. So I will proceed with my presentation now, if that's okay.
Yep, we have it up on the screen here and we will walk through to the pages that you point us to.
Perfect. My name is Peter Hefner, and I represent Breideveld Hefner, the firm of independent certified public accountants that conducted the audit for the Grand Haven Board of Light and Power for the year ended June 30th, 2020. And we are currently looking at the financial statements. And I wanted to direct your attention to the bottom of this page, if you would scroll down for me, please. This is our communications to the board in regards to auditing standards, and it talks about our responsibilities and your responsibilities as far as management. And it talks about significant estimates. It talks about disagreements with management. It talks about if we had any difficulties. And what I would like to point out in regards to the letter itself is that I would refer to it as a boilerplate letter from the perspective of we didn't bring anything to your attention that isn't just directly out of the standards. We talk about the estimates included in the financial statements. We didn't have disagreements with management. The audit went very smoothly. Your staff is very professional and provides us with a wealth of information. And so this letter, I would just read through the letter, and I can go through each of the sections, but there's generally we would put in this letter if there were opportunities to improve your system of internal controls, and we didn't identify any. We perform the audit, your staff provides the information. We're not doing accounting or providing accounting services during the audit. Your staff basically prepares all of the information included in the audit. So that's very positive. Can we go to the financial statements themselves?
What page would you like to go to?
I would like to go to page 1, please. Up a bit. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here remotely today. So these are your financial statements. And if you would scroll down to the actual page numbered one, and I'll let you know when you get there, you'll see our letterhead. If you scroll right down to the bottom here where it says our opinions, our opinion on your financial statements is 2 pages long, and I'm going to summarize that. First of all, the financial statements are the responsibility of management and ultimately the board. It's our responsibility to express an opinion on the financial statements based on our audit. Your audit was conducted in accordance with government auditing standards as well as generally accepted auditing standards. And our opinion is, 2 pages long, but I'm going to summarize it with the paragraph that follows opinions right near the bottom of the page there. It's our opinion that the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position, results of operations, cash flows of the Grand Haven Board of Light and Power as of June 30th and for the year ended June 30th, 2020 and 2019 in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And that's the highest opinion you can receive. You are following the standards required by the state of Michigan, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, and the information that follows, it is our opinion, is presented fairly in accordance with those standards. I wanted to just walk through some of the highlights, if I may, and if you would scroll down to page 7 for me, please. So our opinion is followed by the management's discussion and analysis, which provides a nice summary of where you ended up the year, why did things change, what are you considering in your budget. I'm going to take you right to the financial statements. And so here is your statement of net position. And I just wanted to point out the big changes this year. If you take a look 4 lines down on the asset section, you will see that there is a zero balance in 2020 and a $4.4 million balance in 2019 for your inventory. So all of the inventory was utilized. It primarily was coal and fuel, diesel fuel. And so that reduction in inventory, result of closing your plant and burning the fuel and disposing of it. And that, if you had a break-even bottom line, would have added approximately $4.4 million to your cash and cash equivalents. So if you look at the top line here, you'll see you ended the year with $22 million in cash and cash equivalents, $16 million in the previous year. You can see a direct correlation between the inventory declining and the cash going up. Also, if you scroll down the page here, you will see approximately midway down, there are right above the total asset classification, you can see that your total non-current assets increased from the prior year by approximately $5 million. That's the result of the intensive improvements or capital investment within your system. So your capital assets have increased over 2019 by about $5 million. A lot of activity with improvements in your infrastructure and system. And also, as we scroll down the page to the long-term liabilities, you will see that your net pension liability increased from $4.9 million to $7.5 million. And that increase is primarily the result of changes in the actuarial assumptions at the Michigan Employee Retirement System. They have reduced their assumed discount rate and their rate of return on investments. And that has resulted in that liability increasing in the current year. So from a balance sheet or a statement of net position perspective, the big swings were cash, inventory, capital assets, and the increase in your net pension liability. If you would scroll down, please, to page 8. Some of the highlights here, right at the top of the page, you'll note that your commercial sales, industrial sales were down approximately $3 million, and that's the result of COVID, but just showing you what's changed this year versus what was in last year's financial information. The big swings there are due to the shutdown and the closing of plants and commercial activities. From an expense perspective, if you take a look down under the non-operating revenues and expense category, you'll see that there is a line referred to as asset retirement expense. And that asset retirement expense is recording a liability for the costs of environmental remediation associated with the coal deck and the coal ponds or the ash ponds at the former plant site. Recording a liability is required under accounting principles, which you adopted last year. That liability for the remediation of those two components of the plant facility resulted in the current year expense of $3.4 million. A large portion of that is a liability awaiting payment for the activities that are currently being performed. But that's a large change from the prior year, and I wanted to point that out as well. If you would scroll down to page 9 for me, we're going to take a look at the statement of cash flows and just repeat some of the things that we've already seen. But we can see there, do you see the line 3 down from the top? It says payment to suppliers, and you can see that that was reduced from the prior year. That's a result of not having to make that whole purchase in the current year to maintain your inventory. So a decline there in the dollars outflowing from a cash perspective. And also, when you take a look down the page, you can see the asset retirement obligation approximately midway down the page under cash flow from capital and related financing activities. That asset retirement obligation displays to what extent cash outflows occurred for some of the remediation activities. Now, the following line, you will see it refers to acquisition of capital assets. So you purchased $6.8 million worth of capital assets. That's system infrastructure compared to the prior year of $5 million. And when we were looking at the statement of net position, we saw that there was an increase in capital assets. It's directly related to these purchases. These purchases are being depreciated as all your capital assets are being depreciated. So there's not a one-for-one increase in the statement of net position. The statement of net position theoretically would have gone up by $6.8 million for capital, but then we have the depreciation component. So all of your capital assets are going to be depreciated over their estimated useful life, utilizing a systematic allocation of those costs. So the big financial highlights really are in the financial statements are reduction of inventory, increase in capital assets, increased liability related to the cleanup of the environmental issues, but this does not cover all of the costs associated with tearing down the building and things of that nature. Accounting standards require that to be recorded as you proceed with the demolition and whatever you do with that property going forward. If you would scroll down to page 25 for me. Thank you also for being my helper here on scrolling. I just wanted to point out here is a historical perspective of the entire liability associated with the city's post-retirement or defined benefit MERS plan. And if you take a look in 2019, you will see on the fifth line down, you'll see that change in assumptions. In 2015, the change in assumptions increased the liability by $4.4 million. 2019, it increased the liability by $4 million. So changing the assumptions at the MERS level or for the entire MERS retirement plan across all entities has resulted in an increase in your liability in the current year. And you're only a share of this entire plan, and your share is identified at the bottom of the page. But I just wanted you to kind of follow with me that the liability increased as a result of the change in the assumptions. Their discount rate historically since 2015 was 8%, and now they have gone to 7.6%. discount rate, meaning they use that 7.6% to get a present value of what they think they're going to pay people out. Decreasing that percentage results in ultimately the liability going up. Also, at the very back of the report on page 29, is our report on internal controls over financial reporting. So this is the system of controls that you have in place to prepare this report. And this report, or this opinion that we provide here is related to the system of internal controls over financial reporting. Typically, if there was an issue, we would identify that there is a material weakness or a significant deficiency with your system of internal controls. We have not done so, and I wanted to point that out because oftentimes we point out that there's an issue, and in your case, there is not an issue that we've identified during our testing. So that's a positive aspect as well. We provide a clean opinion on your financial statements or an unmodified opinion, and on your system of internal controls here, we're not identifying any issues that we need to bring to your attention. Your staff is well prepared. It's a straightforward audit. We don't do your accounting, and we do at many, many locations. And we didn't identify any areas where we thought you should take a look at your system of controls. And so I think overall, a good opinion. I hope you expected to see these numbers. I know that you see information on a monthly basis, and it's very consistent with what we see because we look at it. And those are the basics of our results of our audit process. Are there questions I can answer for you?
Any questions? I would just like to mention, we've talked a little bit about the change in what MERS has valued our account at. And we have a proposal of what we are going to be doing over the next couple of years to catch up. Are you aware of that plan?
I
Basically,
think that
how much extra we're going to put in each year?
I am not sure that I am aware of that, but if you take a look at, there actually is a schedule within this document that shows when you have paid extra in the past. And so I'm familiar with the fact that you tend to be paying extra on an annual basis, and in the current year you paid extra, and it's a little hard to discern because you pay extra while the city may or may not pay extra, and we're reporting on the entire plan. But I know your plan is closed. I know that you're diligently funding this in excess of what's required.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments, Dave?
No, I would just make two comments, I guess. The first one is that I think Lynn is on the phone, so her team has done an excellent job. You know, we always haven't gotten as clean of audits as what you see here, and Lynn has brought this as a regular thing for her team, and I think she should be congratulated for maintaining this. And then secondly, I think we just need to receive it and receive and file as an action for the board.
Okay, hearing no other comments or questions, Dave did indicate we should have a motion, receive it as an action report. Comments or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you, Peter. That was a very good report. Sorry for the attempts in the beginning that didn't work out, but we'll look forward to seeing you next year.
Thank you, sir, and I appreciate the opportunity to work for you.
Very good.
Thanks, Peter.
Next item on the agenda is consent agenda. What is your pleasure?
I'll make a motion.
Comments or questions?
I have a couple of questions.
Go ahead.
On the minutes. Just a couple of suggestions for the board to consider. On page 7 of the minutes, at the end of the second paragraph, I think we did mention in there, in fact, Dave, it might have been you that mentioned that it takes 4 of the 5 council members to sell the property, and that probably ought to be in this paragraph. I put it on the last sentence, city council, who must also approve of the sale. I added by 4 of 5 council members may have it's just somebody reading this, it would be appropriate for them to know that that was passed on at that meeting. Any objection to that from
Any
anybody?
objection? Well, so make the change.
Okay. Also down at the end of that same page, next, I guess you'd say the third to the end paragraph, starting the general manager cautioned the board. The end of that paragraph, I disagreed, and that's in there, but I think it's important to point out why I disagreed, which was that only discussion of or the discussion or deliberation by the board members of BOP business applies to that rule. In other words, 3 board members can go to a meeting as long as they're not discussing BOP business. Any objection to adding that?
Isn't that what the previous sentence says?
It doesn't say what deliberations or discussions, Dave. It just says no deliberations or discussions. So I would like that clarified. Is there an objection to that?
Well, I guess this is my caution, and I guess I don't like having people put words in my mouth. I think what I said is that if you go to these meetings, we should put, I'm not proposing that you can't deliberate or discuss. It just has to be posted as a board meeting if you're going to deliberate and discuss issues in public. That's all I said, and then you disagreed with that. So I don't know how the minutes should be changed to suggest that, but this is exactly what the comment was that I made.
But it was directed at these public forums,
Right.
which are on subjects that don't deal directly with BLP business. Yeah, I would just add the sentence, only discussion or deliberation of board members on BLP business applies.
Yeah, this is my comment. So I don't really like my comment being changed.
But it says at the end, Dave, Directive Nasser disagreed. That wasn't your comment.
That's all you said, is you said you disagreed. That's it. That's all you said at the time.
No, I followed that up with what I just said.
Okay, well, if you want to change your disagreement comment, that's fine, but this is exactly what I said.
I would like to do that. Yeah.
So whatever you want to propose.
Just the sentence I just read. Okay. Only discussion or this is Nasser saying this, okay? Only discussion or deliberation of board members on BOP business applies. Talking about the Open Meetings Act. I had one other item, Jack, and it's just a comment. Back on page 5, I believe, and I'll stand corrected if not true, that when a motion to table is made, there's no debate. It has to be voted on without debate. And then I'm just saying that for future, for the future. You make a motion to table something, it's not a debatable motion. Okay, it was debated here. Jerry had his comments.
Jerry is such a robber.
I know it, he breaks the law all the time. Okay, that's good. Thank you, Jack, thank you.
There's no suggested changes to the
No,
minutes. That's
not
what actually occurred,
Not
correct?
that happened. It happened. So the motion would be to approve the minutes, Jerry, as amended?
Yes. We move it all in the consent agenda. So it's just, if you approve the consent agenda, you approve. I believe we have a motion.
But the changes in the minutes would
Are part of that.
be approved.
By approving the consent agenda, you are approving the minutes with the changes that we just discussed.
Aye.
Is there anyone on the phone that would like to make a public comment? If you could raise your hand using the hand feature, we will recognize you. This is not raising your hand in the picture. It is using the raise hand feature on Zoom. If you raise your hand, we will unmute you and let you discuss or have a presentation.
Am I not?
Was your speaker on?
Renee, would you please read the letter?
Okay, we have a letter to the Board of Directors, which has been placed on your tables from the Utility Workers Union of America, Local 582. It's a letter of support for BOP's energy plan from Utility Workers Union of America, Local 582. In June 2018, the union publicly supported the board and management's plan to retire the Sims power plant due to the investments that were required, changed market conditions, and the fact that the unit had reached the end of its useful life. We understood that in a constantly evolving energy market, changes needed to be made for the BLP and the city of Grand Haven to be successful in the future. We would now like to publicly state for the record that we support the board and management in the plans for redevelopment of the former Sims site. The plan to build a small but flexible combined heat and power plant that fits perfectly to the downtown snowmelt system is a creative solution to a community issue. If the utility heats the facility and becomes a snowmelt customer on this site, then they should be commended by thinking outside the box to keep the snowmelt costs sustainable into the future. We know that any plans proposed would not be recommended unless they were economically justifiable and in the long-term best interest of our electric utility ratepayers. This energy plan offers the community the ability to own a small piece of locally owned and locally controlled generation that can be used during high-priced energy times to control and keep energy costs low. It is also an extremely low-risk endeavor as capacity prices have changed significantly over the course of the past 2 years that make this investment more economical than previously thought. We should always be mindful that if we only buy capacity from others, we will make those payments into perpetuity. Sorry, perpetuity. These benefits, given the small investment in the utility system, seem completely reasonable when developing a diversified power supply portfolio. Additionally, the costs for this capacity are in line when compared to the current solar contracts that have already been entered into, and at the end of those 20-year contracts, we will own nothing. It also supports the desires of those who claim that they want a larger increase in renewable energy options. Plants such as these directly complement an increased amount of intermittent generation in a power supply portfolio. The concept of incorporating a local community solar garden and the plans to allow space for emerging technologies such as battery storage should also not be overlooked. This is a comprehensive, all of the above approach for developing a flexible and adaptable energy strategy. This plan also allows the community to get Harbor Island redeveloped with an extremely attractive view, much of which will also be open to the public so that this site does not become an eyesore from the downtown. We made the correct decision to support management and the board in 2018, and we affirm our support for their current plans to redevelop Harbor Island. The community and the BOP will be well served by this flexible, adaptable energy plan. Sincerely, Bill Ryther, President, Nate Locke, Vice President, Sean Cook, Treasurer.
Okay, thank you. Would you repeat again who that was from?
The letter is from the union officers, Bill Ryther, President, Nate Locke, Vice President, and Sean Cook, Treasurer.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is purchase orders 1 through 3, 1 for 2, and B 1 through 3.
Okay, purchase orders first, items 1 and 2, 2 items. $8,000 for testing inspections of buckets and diggers. This is our normal dielectric inspection of the facilities to make sure that they don't conduct electricity, that sort of thing. This isn't like a mechanical instruction. It's more of an electrical inspection of the facility, the equipment. Normally done every year, so this is a normal expense. And then also our annual tree trimming contract. We have $150,000 that we've put in our budget the last couple of years to catch up on the tree trimming. We've been falling behind. We're on a normal 5-year rate. So we actually bid out 4 sections, assuming that we would actually be able to do 3 of them. So we kind of bid these packages, and the low bid, actually, we can get 4 sections done that we would, to get further caught back up for $8,000 above our budget. So our recommendation is to approve that low bid for $158,000, and that will even get us closer to being up to speed. And we normally do it in the wintertime when the trees are as they are now. So this is the perfect time to approve this contract. So our recommendation is to just approve those 2 purchase orders and at this meeting. So
Move to approve.
Second.
You're so sweet.
okay, item B1, resolution to exempt the GHP from requirements of Act 152 for calendar year 2021. This is an action that you have taken every year since 2011. It really allows us to continue on our existing healthcare insurance program that we do not require a 20% employee contribution as required under this act. So you're required to exempt it. It's something that we've maintained for the last several years above or less than the 20%. And if you remember a few years back, we've been increasing our other pension contributions, that sort of thing from employees. So we've maintained this healthcare benefit at the level that it has, which is reason for this exemption. A few years back, we also changed from a fiscal year plan to a calendar year plan. So that's why you're seeing it in December or November instead of May. So the resolution is before you. It's a standard resolution that we've passed every year, and staff's recommendation is to approve it again this year.
Move to approve.
A roll call vote, please.
Director Crum,
Yes.
Director Keefe, Director Noster,
Yes.
Director Witherell,
Yes.
Chairperson Smant.
Yes, motion carries. Next item.
The next item on your agenda is you have 3 proposals for engineering services that were directed staff to get from the last meeting. These 3, and they also have a letter from Eric. Eric is here to answer any questions on the recommendation. It is our recommendation to award these engineering and design work contracts to Progressive A&E, PEC, and NTH. And we'll answer any questions on that.
Eric, you want to make any comments out of the letter you want to highlight? You're working on it. We've been a work in progress tonight.
So real quick, just before I get into this, I wanted to give you guys a quick update. We commissioned the snow melt system on Wednesday. So that thing is up and fully operational. And obviously we shut everything off because we're in a fairly nice fall season right now. But Northern Boiler was the contractor who did the installation of the boilers, piping, pumps, expansion tanks, air dirt separator. Beist was our electrical equipment contractor, and Grand Valley Automation did the controls, and these guys all did a fantastic job. Everything turned out really well. Our own electrician, Doc Zudema, worked directly with Beist, did a lot of work in that facility himself, so he was a great asset to have. But I saved the best for last, which was Adam Mcconnell, who was the project manager. He did a fantastic job from start to finish. And so we all owe him an attaboy for the work and the hours and the effort that he put in. And it wasn't an easy project. And he saw it through and just did an outstanding job. We're very, very lucky to have that guy on staff. So just wanted to give you a heads up on the 3 proposals. Couple comments I'd like to make before we get into the details. For those that didn't get a chance to listen to Dave's presentation of the council on Monday, my understanding is he's going to go over some of that financial information tonight. But that's really vital information as we move forward to this next project, because what it directly shows is the results of our planning efforts that we've made to date are right on target. This utility is going down the right path. And so why is that important as we start talking about these proposals? This strategic plan that we've been following for the past 5 years, and the results you'll see once Dave goes through his financial information, clearly are going to demonstrate that we are following a good plan and that we are still proceeding down that path. As we uncovered details and got into the weeds on the 36 megawatt project that we started down, and it became apparent that that wasn't going to be a good move for this community or this utility or for our ratepayers, we met with concerned stakeholders that were worried about what the effects could be to the downtown snowmelt system. And we said, hold on, just give us time. We're not going to leave anybody out in the cold. And there's just a little bit of pun intended. We're going to make sure that whatever we do, and we still believe there's a solution here, but it's got to be the right solution for the electric utility first. And then any ancillary benefits to the community will just be icing on the cake. But we do think there's a solution. Just like what we did for the snowmelt system. We didn't go with the first plan. We didn't like it. We said, let's hold on. Let's neck this thing down and see if there's a better fit for this community. This project that we're recommending and that we're moving forward with, as much as we preach about energy optimization as a utility, and we provide all sorts of benefits to our customers to go to LEDs, use their energy efficiency or efficiently, this is a perfect example of practicing what we preach. Instead of just burning gas and all it's doing is heating 3 city blocks, now that gas that gets burnt is actually going to have some megawatt hours associated with it. This small combined heat and power facility is truly an energy optimization project that the utility can defend and justify. And if that adds to the sustainability of the downtown snowmelt system, well, that's just gravy. That's icing on the cake. And so we can justify this project in spades to our electric customers, and we're going to have to over the next 4 months. But as you look at where we've done, what we've done in the past 5 years under Dave's leadership, there should be a lot of comfort that we are moving this thing in the right direction, and that we're never going to do something that isn't in the best interest of this community, the electric ratepayers, or the utility. So with that, I did summarize the 3 proposals, and here's why. The air permitting is going to take a while, and that is not a timeline that we control. It's also not a big expense either, though. It's a pretty small project. It's fairly easy to do. It's just Eagle with COVID. They're working from home. Nothing's going to move quickly on that front. But we are closing a Title V source, so getting an air permit on this site is not going to be a problem. It's just going to take time to get through it. As you can see from the deadlines from the Progressive and the PEC side, you are still going to have a couple months once that portion of the engineering is done to deliberate and decide on if you want to continue moving forward or if we've identified any fatal flaws. We haven't to date, so everything indicates that this thing is going to go. So we've really got 3 groups of people as we talk about the public. We have a group of people that have said they wanted some asset, some locally controlled, locally owned asset, and we're able to justify that. And that's great. And it's going to help with the sustainability of the downtown snowmelt system. So we're certainly happy with that. And I do believe there's some that truly are neutral and are just trying to figure things out and trying to get a handle on these things. But as they're learning with the 30+ documents that are available on our website, there's a lot to this. And we've spent 3 hours with 2 of them. And they're still trying to understand that. So we're willing to spend a lot of time, even if it's a very small group of people, to talk to them. But then I think we also got to recognize the third group. And that's the group that if it's not solar and it's not wind and it's not battery storage, they're not going to be for it. And we're not going to be able to reach those people. But even to that group, I would say, look at what our plans are, and we are incorporating a local solar component, and we are planning for emerging technologies. Is it as large as you want us to move right now? Probably not, but it moves us in that general direction. It is a step. It is a chance to expand. And if we don't take those steps now, they're never going to happen. And so even though we're not doing exactly what they want, we're listening. And that's the beauty of having a municipal utility, right? Local control and local ownership. We listen to our ratepayers in our community. So with that, I'll answer any questions you guys have on the proposals if you have any.
So what you're proposing are the three figures on the second page of the letter.
Yes.
Progressive, the 350, 75, and 26.5.
And the proposals are included as well for any kind of reference.
Okay, the floor is open for discussion.
I'll make the motion.
I did. Okay.
I'll second.
Jack, I'd like to make a few comments. First, I want to ask Eric. Eric, the three companies that you are requesting approval of this evening, were there any others that submitted proposals? How many were there, if there were?
So for the air permitting, there were two others. It was FTC&H, who I've worked with in the past, and they're good. They could do a good job for us. And then there was another one, Environmental Partners. Dave has had direct experience with them, and I did get the chance to talk to one of their principal engineers, and I think they could do the job well for us as well. But I have the most experience with NTH. So the three proposals for the air permitting, they were all right on top of one another. I mean, the prices were, I don't want to say identical, but they're pretty doggone close. NTH got a permit for the Marquette Energy Center in 4 months. I'm not going to promise that down here because we're in a different world with COVID. But they know what they're doing. They've permitted much larger projects. They seem to be doing a lot of these permits now. I feel the most comfortable with them. I think the other two would have been okay, but I think these guys give us the best chance. And like I say, the prices were all within $1,000, and that's right in line. On PEC has done a lot of these combined heat and power facilities, and we're kind of talking about an industrial size application, not so much as when you're thinking of a utility size that maybe a Sargent and Lundy and a Black and Veatch and a Burns and McDonnell. I mean, you certainly could have gotten proposals from them, but they would have been much more expensive. And it's almost like bringing in a tank when all you need is a 4-door car. PEC, this is their niche. They don't build big power plants. They build industrial size combined heat and power for industrial customers. This is right in their wheelhouse. On the Progressive side, they really know this area well, and they're really well connected. They've done a lot of waterfront projects. And so I still believe, and we've talked about this as staff, these guys are the right fit for Grand Haven. They've got the flavor. They've done the Coast Guard Station, the Lynn Sherwood Stadium. And so making sure we do something, at least from an architectural perspective, that's going to fit in with the aesthetics of this community seem very important for what we're doing.
So the answer to the question was you did have 2 additional people for the air permitting, but on the other 2, there were no additional.
That is correct.
Roles. Okay.
I would add as well, though, is when we selected, as you know, we selected Progressive A&E and PEC for some of the initial master planning work. And we did look at others at that time as well, but I think that was the appropriate time to really, and as long as they were performing well for us in that regard, we stayed with them. That's essentially what we did.
Mr. Chairman, I want to take issue, I guess, with one of the statements that was made in general manager's report on 6B2. Statement was made that it was the general manager's understanding that the majority of city council was approving the master plan. I've spoken with the mayor and with the mayor pro tem, and they both told me that city council has not approved the master plan. And it would seem appropriate to me that we would have a formal approval from city council before this master plan. This is actually going to cast this master plan in stone. These three companies are going to do the detail engineering, and it's a very significant step. I see it as almost impossible once that is done to consider any other options other than what's on the table right now. So it concerns me that city council has not been asked for their opinion or their formal approval. They also told me when I talked to them that they have not only not approved it, but they have not considered the community's opinion about it or tried to find out yet what that opinion is. So that's one thing. As everybody knows, I have not been in favor of proceeding without more input from the community because there are a number of issues, in my opinion, and in the opinion of others, that need to be resolved first. Whether we buy it or produce it locally, city council is on record as saying that they wanted us, the Board of Light and Power, to create a facility that would have the capability of providing, would have the capacity, let me put it that way, capacity is a word, of providing a majority of the power needed. This plan does not do that, and they have not rescinded that requirement. And I think that needs to be resolved. The reason they said that back in, I think it was 2018, was because it was their opinion that the public wanted a majority of, at least the ability, the capacity to produce a majority of our power. And that's why they said that. We haven't reviewed as a board the pros and cons of the other options. This all started with several reports by outside consultants telling us that we ought to use gas. And other than it being financially the best way to go, there really was no other justification given for it. No consideration of the environment or the availability. The suitability of the island has not been addressed by Progressive AE. And it needs to be addressed, and the public wants it addressed, in my opinion. There's also the question of, should we have backup? And I know, there are people in this room that think that we'll never have the grid go down, or the odds of it going down are 0.001%. But that is not necessarily the findings of the federal government. For those reasons, I'm opposed to proceeding any further with this without hitting the pause button and resolving these issues, and they can be resolved. The other thing that bothers me about this, there was some discussion a little bit earlier about this letter that was received from one of our major users who objects to the plan. They don't want us to proceed with it. And they're one of our major consumers of electricity. Unfortunately, I had to get this letter from somebody else, even though it was addressed to board members, which is unfortunate. It seems to me that when information like this comes in, we all ought to receive it.
He's talking about the shape letter.
A shaped letter. Really?
I got one. I mean, I got the shape distribution. We get it to you.
I'm just saying this letter was written on
I've been
October
gone.
21st.
Huh?
I've been gone. I opened the letter 2 days ago.
Well, then it's Dave's responsibility.
He doesn't get my letters.
Huh?
He doesn't get my letters.
I don't want to get off, hey, I don't want to get off the subject here, fellas.
That's what I'm talking about.
The issue here is,
Why didn't we get a copy of it? Why did it have to come from regular source? I mean, I'm thankful Shape put us on the distribution. Otherwise, we wouldn't have got this.
yeah. But the issue is,
You
it's
didn't get
our,
one?
it's our
You can have a
major.
copy of it. I'll get a copy for you.
It's one of, if not the largest, one of the largest consumers of our energy, and they're not in favor of this plan.
That's Chucky too.
They're not in favor of proceeding.
In fact, this should be read into the minutes, just like all the rest of the public letters that have come in to us.
Anyway, let me wrap up, okay? Point is there's too many unresolved issues here. And so I can't support this, and I would encourage the board to push the pause button until we get these issues resolved. Thank you.
Well, I can tell you this is not the only one, because I got a call this week from another industrial customer who wants me to come in next week.
The group is visiting them. May I speak?
Go ahead.
First of all, let's address the resolution that occurred some years ago. I spoke with the city today, asked them if they felt that it was important to change that resolution. And according to the city manager, he said he would talk with the council, but he didn't think so. I am getting more and more disturbed about this board aligning itself with a small group of people who have been given every bit of information that we have. They didn't like the message and they don't like the messenger. Folks, I got to tell you something. John, this is not city council. This is a totally different business, run a totally different way. And my memory tells me that you joined this board and said you wanted to change the culture. And I want to tell you, I've never understood what that meant, and I still don't. As far as I'm concerned, either you're on this board or you're not on this board, and you're in an outside entity which has been given every possible information. And I will be very provoked as one board member that we push the pause button. We can't do that. Thank you.
Since he used my name,
Hold it.
he used my name.
Hold it. You had your time.
No,
I'll get back to you.
Okay.
Larry.
I'll use more than your name, you dolt.
Well, Jerry gets a little wound up. We all know that, but that's okay. But I don't quite understand what you said has got anything to do with the content of the Shape Corporation letter. It's got nothing to do with Pat McGinnis. It's got nothing to do with what you
Well,
think
first of
about the
all, what
culture.
happened, Larry,
Exactly.
is that some of the committee, the oversight committee, has contacted a couple of the industrial people. Yes.
I was speaking. If you want to let me finish.
Well, what were
can
you
talk.
saying? I must have I thought you were finished.
Screw it.
Okay. Evidently, you have privileges that we don't have, Mr. Witherall. But I'm going to tell you that your continued claim that we don't know what we're talking about is false. There's a heck of a lot more people that have been vocal about objecting to the plan than have said, yes, we like it. And bring forth. Yeah.
Where are
There they come. I'll tell you what, they were on that petition for one thing. The petition. That's where they were. You got 250 people?
I'd like to call for the question.
No way.
Question's been called. Are you ready to go?
Director Crum?
The question is on the motion.
Yep. Roll call vote. Director Crum?
Yes.
Director Keefe?
No.
Director Noster?
No.
Director Witherell?
Yes.
Chairperson Smant?
Yes.
Passed.
Financial review.
You turn.
I'll get it.
Chair, can I just address the letter for just a minute? The letter's brought up. I really wasn't intending to address this letter. There is actually an article in the paper today. Apparently, the Tribune ran an article on this letter as well. I just want to tell you a little bit about the interactions that we have with our largest customers. We regularly meet with our largest customers. We have met with SHAPE every year for the last 5 years. We have given them all the information. When we received this letter, I received a copy of the letter, and Jack received a copy of the letter, and the mayor received a copy of the letter. I was also asked to address the matters in the letter to the chamber board, who has an individual from SHAPE on their board. There is significant misinformation in the letter. And I would like to suggest, and this is the problem, this group that is out there that is handing out information about our project, about the costs, about the information, our customers are getting misinformation. And that's a problem. I'm asking all of our customers to come and talk to us. The information that's in the letter is misinformation. And if the information in the letter was true, I would be upset as well if I was a customer. The problem is there's only one source of the correct information, and that's the BLP. And we need to encourage, as a board, we need to encourage people to come and talk to us about projects that we are proposing. What we've done as a community is we are talking about our projects, and the information is coming from people that know nothing about the project. And that is a problem. That's why we have hired a communication firm to help us get the right information out. So yes, we are aware of the letter. I am more than happy to submit the letter to whoever wants it. Apparently, I don't think SHAPE intended it to go to the press. Before I was asked to respond in the press, and I asked for an assurance that SHAPE was aware of the position that they were going to have their letter published in the paper, and I was not, and the article ran anyway. So in the article, it suggests that I did not respond immediately, and that's about what I was asked to do, respond immediately. And I didn't respond immediately because I had concerns about airing a discussion with our largest customer in the paper. And I don't think that's the appropriate way to address this. And I don't think it's the appropriate way to address it in this fashion either. I'm more than happy to sit down with our largest customer and talk about the project. If board members want to participate in that, I'm more than happy to do that. I am more than happy to talk to our customers about the project. But what we need to ensure, as board members in particular, we need to ensure that the right information is getting put out. Is that fair enough to ask for? Is that fair?
Okay. Now, we didn't get financial review finished. Shifting cost in FY 2021 budget.
Rob, can you, I'll put it up here. Okay, so if you can put up that, I will unshare mine. Okay. This particular piece of information, talking about meeting with the council, I have, Eric and I met with the council at what meeting was that? The second meeting of last month. They asked me to come back, or excuse me, the first meeting of last month. They asked me to come back and talk to them the first meeting of this month. I think your characterization of the council not knowing particular things, I think you'd be surprised at how much they know. So we did They did ask me to come back at this meeting to talk about some of the questions that were raised at last month's meeting. This was one of the things I shared with them, and I thought it would be appropriate to share with the board as well. So if this is going to be really hard to read from this, so you may want to pull this particular piece of information. It's the last page of your board packet. And if you can pull that out, I would like to spend just 10 minutes on this, because that's what I spent with the city council as well. There's been a lot of talk about the financial changes that might occur 4 years from now. I think first, before we understand what the financial changes that are going to occur 3 years or 4 years down the road, we need to understand the financial changes that have occurred this year, all right, in our budget that you approved last spring. So this is an attempt as straightforwardly as I can possibly put the information. This came out last weekend, and I wanted to make sure that the numbers in this particular spreadsheet match up with all of the numbers in your financial report. So top line, top few lines there, these numbers should appear somewhat reasonable because they appear on your monthly financial report every year, as well as your financial statements at the end of the year. So we have had, for the last 35 years, as far as any one of you is on the board, we've had 2 line items that we report on your monthly budget as well as your annual budget for power production. Power production was broken down into two cost buckets. One of them is what I'll call the fixed cost of the plant. That's where all of your costs associated with labor, benefits of the people that work at the power plant are included, as well as all of the fixed maintenance items that occur at the Sims plant every year. Now, what was happening over the last 15 to 20 years is we were expensing a lot of the longer term maintenance items at the plant rather than to depreciate them, because we knew we were at the end of the life. So when we had a major tube leak that cost $1 million, or we had a significant turbine overhaul like we had in 2015, we would expense that in every year. So we had in fiscal year 15, fiscal year 16, fiscal year 17, we had somewhere on the order of $3 to $3.5 million every single year of non-labor related fixed costs at the plant. Those were, quote, our capital costs, along with the debt service that we paid at the plant. Then if you look on this sheet, down on the left side of the page in fiscal year 17, all the way down to the bottom, the highlighted item, you'll see $7.746 million. And that was our last debt service payment that we paid on July 1, 2016, which was the first day of fiscal year 17. So in fiscal year 17, we had $7.6 million of fixed costs at the plant, and we had a $7.7 million debt service payment. So in fiscal year 17, and most years previously to that, we had spent almost $15 million a year in fixed costs at Sims. That's why we are in the problem that we were in, because of the fixed cost at Sims, all right? Now, we also had the variable costs, the fuel costs, all right? So the fuel costs are directly related to how much power you produce. So line 2 is the fuel costs at the plant. So if you wanted to get the total cost, which in dollars per megawatt hour, every year you would take the fixed cost and the variable costs, add them together and divide by the number of kilowatt hours, right? And then what we did is we augmented those plant operations with wholesale power purchases. So for in fiscal year 17, not including the debt service payment, that's a non-operational expense. That's a non-operational expense. So the operating expenses for power production were almost $20 million in fiscal year 17. And we had a $7.7 million debt service payment. So $27 million in power production in fiscal year 17. The next year, power production, debt service went away, right? So that's the bottom line, went away. So, and we haven't had any debt service since. So we had a substantial reduction in the debt service component that, if you remember back, what we did is we returned $2.5 million of that to the public. And we said the other $5 million, we were going to start building our cash reserves that at the time were required to be $18 million, and we were at $13 million. All right? So look down at the bottom of the page, $13 million end of year cash. We were below the cash requirements, so we did not pass a fiscal cash policy at the time because we were below the recommendations for the cost of service study that we had done. All right? So, but if you take that $19 million of operating expense and divide by the 308,000 megawatt hours that we had at the plant, you get a 64.18 operating expense cost per megawatt hour of generation. All right? Now you do the same thing every year, fiscal year 18, fiscal year 19, fiscal year 20, and then our fiscal year 21 budget. What you'll see is $64.18 per megawatt hour in 17, $64.73 per megawatt hour in 18, 65.19 megawatt hours in 19, 63.75 megawatt per megawatt hour in 19. Very, very, very stable costs, power production costs. And you'll see this year in our budget this year, we reduced it down to $50 a megawatt hour. Exactly what I told everyone was going to happen. Everybody says, oh, great. We're going to save $15 a megawatt hour. That's not what I said. That is not what we said. We said we would save $15 per megawatt hour, but I did not say ever that we would reduce our rates by $15 a megawatt hour. Because our distribution costs, what we had said all along is we were going to take the money that we saved and we were going to invest it into our distribution system. All right? That's what we told everybody we were going to do. That's what we told Shape what we were going to do. We never told any of our customers that we were going to reduce our costs. We told them that we were going to take the savings that we incurred and we were going to put them into our distribution system. All right? Now, what exactly are those costs? So if you look down at our distribution costs are the next item, all right? Next item, distribution, system operations, and technical services. Now, the problem with this idea is that reduction in power supply costs, where we included our operation costs for the system was in production. We had operators at the plant that not only operated the plant, but they operated the system. All right? So when we shut down the power plant, we had to put that system operation cost somewhere. So we moved it from production to distribution. That was part of the increased cost of distribution because we still need 24/7 operators to operate, to answer the phone during off hours. We still need people, not as many people as we needed to run the plant, but we still need to fund the operational component of our system. So if you look at that $7.6 million that we reduced, about $4 million of that became operational expense in the distribution utility, So they see that highlighted portion there, $7.7 million, $4 million of that went down to distribution, all right? Now, that $4 million also includes the technical services department that we've taken out of the distribution maintenance department. So the distribution maintenance department is below it. You say, well, wait a minute, why did the distribution maintenance department stay at 2.6 million when you took out the expenses associated with the technical services department that's now in the $4 million that we shifted around? All right. The reason for that is because some of those operators went into your line department and they are now being trained as linemen because next year and this year we had several linemen retire. So we have beefed up the distribution expenses with new linemen from the power plant that are now getting apprentices so that when they retire next year, that we will reduce those costs. Same thing in the metering department. We're putting people in the metering department from the power plant. So right now, our distribution costs are inflated because of the fact that we have taken some substantial amount of people and we've put them into the distribution department. But if you look this year at our distribution and production costs and divide by the kilowatt hours that we produced, look what happened. You take the distribution and the power supply costs and divide by the megawatt hours, $75 in 2017, $76 in 2018, $75 in 2020, $77 in 2021, 20, and for next year's budget, $74.66 a megawatt hour. There is been no reduction in our costs. Even though we saved these costs over here, we had increased costs over here. And that's why our budget does not show a rate increase. It does not show a decrease in expenses. It shows a shifting of costs from one category to another category. Exactly what we expected to happen and budgeted for and planned for the last 5 years. There is nothing that should surprise anybody in this budget. There should be nothing that surprises our customers. There should be nothing that surprises the board. We did not plan on a rate decrease this year. Even though our power supply costs were going down, we did not plan for a rate decrease. We had told everyone that our costs were going to stay the same. All right, so all of this stuff going around town saying our costs are going up, our costs are going down, or they're doing this, they're doing that. None of that information is coming from our budgets. None of it is coming from our cost estimates. None of it is coming from our project forward pricing. None of it is coming from that. It's all consistent with the information that we've had before. Now, what's going to happen next year and the year after and the year after and the year after? What we said is through this transition, our costs are not going to change. So when our costs for the first portion of the project came through and they were at $100 million, what did we say? We're not going to do that. We're not going to do that project because our costs are going to go up and our rates cannot be held stable. So we went back to the drawing board and we came back with another project that we can do without changing our costs, without raising our rates, without changing our power supply costs. Our costs that we're doing with the modified project are 100% entirely consistent with what our costs were from the previous project within our power supply plan. Our costs are exactly where we thought they were going to be. What we did is we reduced the cost of the size of the plant. We reduced those costs. Yes, our purchase costs went up because we're not building as much. Purchase costs went up. Power supply costs in total stayed the same. All of our other costs stayed the same. There is no huge reduction. I don't know where all this stuff is coming from. There's not a huge cost change. Everything is exactly where we said they were going to be, exactly what we said the information was going to be. Yet somehow we have this understanding going around town that now we're doing something completely different than what we said we were going to do originally, and our costs are much higher than they're going to be. No, we did not do the project that would raise the cost. We went back, we reinstituted and redesigned the plant to live within our budget. Okay, that's exactly what we did. We are now living within our budget. So that's what I gave to the council. I answered a lot of their questions, but I think the problem is that we need to stick to the information that we actually have, the real information, and not this information that's being, however, spread around town. That's why, I tried to do this. I think the other information on this sheet, just so you know, is there's this impression that we have too much cash, that we're building cash. Our cash building is on this sheet. You can see where our cash has been built. Yes, this is 100% consistent with our cash management plan that we had proposed 5 years ago. Our cash is growing. It is 100% consistent with where it needs to be. And I do believe that now it is gonna be a recommendation from staff next month or the month after to use some of this cash again. That the cash is building up to where it should be, but now we're gonna have to use some of that cash again to address this unfunded liability. All right. So what you see in this fiscal year 2021 plan for cash is that cash should settle around $25 million, which is exactly where we said we wanted it to be to go to the bond market. That will allow for a $4 million transfer to our unfunded liabilities to bring those unfunded liabilities down to where we wanted them to be 4 years ago when we originally made the transaction. So all of that's prudent cash management policy. Everything is consistent with what we had said they were going to be. And that's what I wanted to do. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions on it. But that's the information that I shared with council, because these were the discussion that I had last month at the time. And I think what council wanted to hear is that the project that we're giving can be done within the budget parameters and the effects on rates that we told them originally that we were going to do.
Dave, I have one question. It's not directly on this, but could you enlighten us as to, for planning purposes, what you would use for per kilowatt? I'm sorry, per megawatt for the purchase of capacity?
Okay, so purchase capacity.
I'm talking about for planning. I know it varies.
Right, for planning. So we have now purchased forward 4 years. All right. So the 4 year, and what MPPA does to help us with that is they actually look out and establish kind of a forward price curve for capacity and energy. All right. So what they do is they project where they think it's going to be for both capacity and energy. They establish a curve, and then they evaluate projects based on that capacity and energy price that they projected forward. Right?
What are we using?
So what we are using in the model is their forward price curve for that. That goes from, and what happened last year, if you remember, we talked about capacity prices being at $3 and stuff like that. What happened last year at the auction is the price went up. So they are currently in the process of revising those cost estimates consistent with the changes that were occurred last year and our prices that we're buying out 4 years now. The forward price curve for 4 years out is in that $480, $490 a megawatt hour range.
$4?
$4 a kilowatt month, excuse me, $4 a kilowatt month. So how do I compare that to our cost for a project? So if you take our project and you take the installation cost, let's say the project is at 13, and this is a pretty good number for our existing project, $1,300, $1,350 a kilowatt install. All right. Now you have to finance that over a given period of time. So you take that kilowatt charge, that the installation charge, and you amortize it over 20 years, 25 years. Depending on what you amortize it over, you're going to get a debt service component on that installation cost. And if you look at our net present value of that revenue stream of $17 million, it's about, I think it's running right now at $6.50 or something like that, a kilowatt month on average over that life of that
That's for
plant.
the project? The project?
Yeah.
What is it again?
Is that about the right number? Am I, $6.50 a kW month or something like that. And I would have to look at the exact numbers. So what we're seeing, and this is exactly what the board will be asked to work on, is if we justified the plant solely on capacity costs, capacity costs. And just look at the avoided capacity costs. The installed costs of a new plant are on the high end of the projections for MPPA that they have right now for their forward price curve, right? So if they're saying that the costs are $4.80 now and they escalate that at some fashion out 20 years, they can come up with a average price, let's say at $5.50 or $5.80 or whatever the number comes out to be. And they can make a recommendation that the buy alternative is, let's say it's $5. And this is what PEC did in their analysis, is they looked at the various proposed levels of capacity. And they said, if the capacity level is here, how does that compare with this plant? If the capacity level is here, how does it compare with the plant? And what they said is a break-even point. It's like in the low sixes or the high fives, depending on if you buy 4 units or 5 units, and you can look at that study. So what they're doing is they're comparing the buy to the rent. All right, and it's at this point in time, everybody's saying that the rent, if the prices stay where people think they're going to stay now, it's slightly less than the own scenario. So that's what you're hearing people say, and this is what we've told, and this is what all our experts have said, is that if you are only looking at the cost of buying forward and the cost of owning forward, the costs are close, but if you want the lowest cost, you go to the rent category. All right.
Is the 650 per kilowatt month number, does that include the interest?
Yes.
In the bond?
Yes.
For the bonding, and does it include the cost for the building to enclose the generators and the utilities that would be needed for it? Does it include?
Yes.
All of it?
All that. And if you look at what MISO does as a comparison, you've heard me use this term before, but what MISO does is they cap the annual auction at what they call cone. All right. So cone is the cost of a new entry. All right. The cheapest cost that MISO sees of capacity in the marketplace is a 250 megawatt simple cycle combustion turbine. So what MISO does, and actually an individual called the independent market monitor determines what that cone cost is in every region within MISO. And they use the cost of money for a merchant plant. They use the cost installation cost. And last year, the cost of new entry was $7.83 a kilowatt month. So our cost of this plant is less than cone. And it's less than the clearing price that the auction ran at this spring. So the question is does the capacity cost going forward stay at cone? If it stays at cone,
What's it done historically?
it stays at the price. It's a supply-demand relationship.
Yeah.
All right. So as long as there is adequate supply, particularly in the auction, the people that bring the auction is a supplemental auction. Most people don't buy and transact at that because that's the last minute transaction. But what's been happening is the price on the auction has been very, very inexpensive, actually less expensive than what most bilaterals are settling at because there's been a bunch of excess. So the people in the marketplace have sold their capacity before they go to auction at some level between cone and what they think is the auction is going to clear at. So this idea of determining, and this is where everybody is getting really, really confused. All right. We can very, very accurately determine what our costs are for ownership of the new facility. We can very accurately, in the next 6 months, we will have that nailed down exactly. We will know the interest rate. We will know the cost. We will know the installation cost. So when we come next spring for the final cost determination, we will know exactly what our cost of this plan is. And we can price that against Cone, all right? The question is what is the alternative for the next 20 years? And your question, their first question is, what is the alternative?
Let me ask a different question. What?
I think we're gonna have to let you fellas discuss this on your own.
Okay.
We're getting a little far apart from the agenda.
Well, I think that's that, but I think what everybody needs to understand is that cost of capacity is included in that $15 million. All right. It's included in the all-in cost of buying. And obviously, if we own some capacity locally, that cost will go down and our owned capacity cost will go up. If we don't build that $17 million, that cost just doesn't go away. It doesn't just go and evaporate and we don't have that cost. It goes into that $15 million. So what you're trying to do is, and what we're saying, and what I think everybody has to realize is we believe that given the benefits of the project and the capacity costs and other benefits that we receive off that unit, that it does make financial sense.
Okay, let's move on to number 3. Number 7, other business.
Okay, I just have 2 quick reports. That one of them, Eric already talked about, was the snow melt system is in operation. We're ready for the winter. We're going to be billing the cost of gas to the city for the new units. For the gas, and we're not recovering any capital costs this winter. So the capital costs, we're just going to build the carrying costs of the capital of our short-term loan. That's it. So those operational costs this year will be recovered from the city, but we are ready to go. The streets will be heated. Everything is done. And quite frankly, that was some really good work by Eric, Adam, and their whole team over there. All right. Good work. We got it. When we met our commitment, we will heat the streets this winter. I did want to talk about 2 other things, and I just wanted to have Rob mention 2 other things on AMI and our substation. Our substation also went into our island substation. The $4 million investment is now fully online, and I want to congratulate Rob and let him tell you a little bit about those 2 projects.
Great.
So what Dave is talking about, I'll start with an AMI update. We have over 13,000 of our roughly 14.5 meters installed. We are up and working. We're billing off them, and they are guys in the meter department and some of the guys we brought over from the plant, like we talked about earlier, have just banged that out. Our vendor in this project is Lannis and Gear, and they're actually asking if they can use us as testimonial, how well it went. They're floored by how fast we got this done, how well it went, especially with all the COVID stuff. They were not allowed to come on site or travel, and we did that all with our team in-house. So the guys, Austin and the meter guys just banged that out. One thing I did hear about, and I think it's worth just putting it out there, some of the positive stuff we talked about, things we'll know, fix problems before they become a problem. Just happened this last week. We had some alarms come in on a customer. We just dispatched someone to go check it out. We found the wires going from the meter into the house were melted and was just about ready to start a house fire. So we dispatched guys, we disconnected the power, saved someone's home. So not going to happen every day, but it's one of those things that says, hey, the system does have other benefits other than the things we talked about. From the technical side, it does help provide a better service to our community. So that's a cool little story that just came out. Dave was also saying that we have $4 million project, the Grand Haven substation, went in operation here the last couple of weeks. We've transferred all the load from the old substations that are right up next to the Sims 3 building, been moved to the new location, all online, all looking good. And it's nice to see the younger guys going, wow, this is really nice stuff. So, we went from stuff from the 1960s up to stuff that's cutting edge of 2020 technology. So it's a lot of hard work with Kent, a lot of, as you guys know, working out on the site at the Harbor Island. it's with the high water and so on and so forth, we had a lot of challenges, but we're a little behind schedule, but we're on budget and we're moving forward. So they are moving the transformer, one last piece of equipment from the old substation to the new substation tomorrow. So that is a big milestone, a big check mark. Like I said, that's a big project for our utility in one location to get done and off the books.
Very good. Well, we've heard a lot of good comments about the staff and all who have worked on these different projects, and we appreciate it, and we agree with the accolades.
Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
could I ask Rob a question? Couldn't you put that together for the Grand Haven Tribune? What a great story. Save this house from burning up. Think about it.
You asked if I could. I'm going to defer to our
Come
public
on.
relations people. I'm not your PR guy.
Okay.
There's someone else. We talked about that at staff.
Be a great story.
It is something good. We'll have to obviously talk with the customer and see if they want that story out there. But like I said, I think it's worthwhile here. And, you know, we've seen things on Facebook. We've seen some of the discussions we've had in the board meeting of people not necessarily thrilled with AMI or this is not good or this is bad, or it's nice to finally get a positive story.
So that brings us just a prelim to next week's meeting. If everybody remembers, we got one meeting next week because we're meeting early so that we can go deer hunting, we can go wherever else later this month. So we normally meet second week of November, regular meeting, 4 o'clock next week. Couple things, the agenda will be fairly light, hopefully. Couple things that will be on the agenda, and this is, again, we're shifting our focus. Our capital improvement plan is everything is shifting away from generation to distribution. One of the things that's in our capital improvement plan is a new transformer next year at Ossipoff. It's a huge investment.
Yeah.
And so that transformer will cost about $900,000. So at next week's meeting, we have before you a request for a purchase order for a new transformer at Ossipoff that takes, 36 weeks? 36 weeks, so that will be on the agenda. We also have our next 2400 volt conversion project that will be around First Street downtown. That's about $650,000, but the labor portion contract will be on your budget next week. So some big distribution type projects for next year. And through the winter and into next year are starting to pop up. Those are all those distribution projects that appeared on your capital improvement plan that we're starting to implement those things. And quite frankly, that's where your significant investment is going to be over the next 2 or 3 years, is just as much in the distribution system as it is out on Harbor Island. I know we're focusing on that project, but there's a lot of big projects that we're going to be doing on the distribution side to keep that system up to speed as well.
Jack, I'd like to know what the plan is for December. Are we going to continue with 2 meetings?
Yeah.
Do we need 2 meetings in December is my question.
I was going to propose, and I was going to do this next week, and that's up to you, but one of the things that we did have an individual on the call last week that from MPPA, Pat Bolin. I think it would be a good thing to have Pat Bolin come here and answer your questions about power purchasing and MPPA's role in that, what their thoughts are on various things. I think he actually came to the Grand Haven Energy Group last week. I would think that would be, if we kind of keep that first meeting of December somewhat clear as more of a work session and have MPPA come, if I can. I haven't asked him yet, but I'm hopeful that he'd come. I would like to use that first meeting in December for that purpose as more of a work study. And then if we had some, minor other items that we could put on the agenda to approve any kind of work orders or anything, or purchase orders or something like that, we would add that as well. But for the most part, we dedicate that first meeting in December for that purpose, if that's the will of the board. And because I think we did approve of the meetings through the end of the year, and then we can talk at the second meeting in December, whether we do it in January. But in January, we do have Hometown Connections coming in the day before your January regular meeting for our strategic planning session. So you might want to look at your calendar for January and just make sure that that day before the board meeting, if you have a problem, I would need to know about it sooner rather than later. The day before the January meeting, Jack's going to be gone, but he's going to conference in, and we're going to have that morning of the Wednesday morning before our Thursday board meeting, a 4 hour or so meeting with our strategic planning group.
Jack, can I clarify this? First of all, then for December, we are going to meet on the first Thursday and the third Thursday. And the first Thursday is at 7 o'clock in the evening, and the third Thursday is at 4 o'clock in the evening. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then in January, since we don't know whether we're gonna have 2 meetings or not, you're talking about the meeting the third Thursday,
Yep,
reserving some time on Wednesday before that meeting,
correct.
in the morning or afternoon, Dave? What'd you say?
Morning.
4 hours in the morning?
Not, yeah, 9 to, maybe we would be come in at 9 o'clock or whatever, and then, because we want to get Jack in from, to conference in, so he's a couple hours behind. It's 2 hours difference, right? Okay, so microphone.
It just changed.
Okay, so,
So it's 3 hours.
all right, so we're gonna try
Well,
to
you can start at 9.
9 or 10, whatever it is, and then we'll wait for a few hours. And the idea is that's when Tim Blodgett's going to be here. He's going to work with the staff after that, and then the next day he's going to meet with staff, and then we're going to have our normal board meeting on Thursday. So the idea is to try to combine those 2 meetings together, and then what we'll be doing from that point is we'll be going forward with our strategic planning. But they want to talk to the board for some time. I also want to remind the board that the Hometown Connections will be coming. What's the other time that they're coming in for the assessment? It's like the first week in December. Is that correct? Second and third.
How about if you put out a memo with these
We-
dates for December and January?
Sure.
So that we can plan, okay?
Yep. I just want to explain what you're going to get, because we were planning on doing that. But Hometown Connections is coming in and performing the business assessment or the organizational checkup that they had. We had a kickoff meeting this week, and part of that is they're going to want to talk to some board members. All right, if they can get in touch with you during that period of time, because they want to hear your comments. So if there's, we will try to get 2 or 3 board members, who's ever available during that time, to meet with Hometown Connections and get they'll probably ask you some governance questions about governance of the organization, because that's primarily what they will ask you about, is the governance. And, they want to hear your comments. So I think if you're not in town, obviously, they're either going to call you or, Jack, they might want to call you. But I'll give you those dates. They probably don't need you to come in. If you don't want to come in, if you want to come in and talk to them, that's probably going to be open to you as well. But they're going to be here for 2 days in early December. So we'll give you those dates too. Yep.
Anything further?
Me too.
No?
I met last week with Bob Bonesta and Pat McGinnis about the diesel plant. We just had an informal conversation about the direction of that. From that meeting, Pat invited me to come back and sit in on the Brownfield meeting, which was very interesting. And from that, I was invited by General Manager Walters to listen to his presentation to City Council. From all of that came a request from the city that we have a parade go out on the 16th of November to Harbor Island and give the council a view of what's going on there. Now, I understand, Eric, that we need to get approval from the people that are there, so we'll coordinate that. It is not going to be a walk around. They simply want to see what's been going on there, and it would seem to me that it's a good idea to include them in that. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Jerry, I was talking about that. I mean, 6 o'clock is going to be dark out there.
Well, that was their recommendation, and you know what? You're right. I forgot about that. I'll work on that.
Okay. I mean,
Thank you for that.
we're happy to take them out there whenever they want. And if the board wants to join.
Is that for us too?
Yes, of course. I think it should be there.
Yeah.
That's why I bring it up.
Good.
Anything further?
I have something to bring up, Jack. I'd like to let the board know that the next public forum to be held by the Grand Haven Energy Association is next Tuesday, November 10th at 7 p.m. at the Grand Haven Community Center. It'll be a community discussion on the environmental concerns of energy for Grand Haven. You're all invited.
Okay, thank you. Anything further? Call for adjournment.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn.
Support?
Support.
All in favor, say aye.